Have you ever felt as if your presence had been completely erased from the memory of someone who once swore their love for you? It is a pain that not only wounds the heart but also corrodes the soul, and here comes the insight of Carl Jung, the master who taught us that everything we try to forget or reject comes back not because the universe is cruel, but because the human psyche is much deeper and more mysterious than we can understand at first glance. Perhaps you do not yet know that there is a silent, invisible and extremely effective way to make someone who has passed on think of you again, not through manipulation, but through a natural phenomenon of the unconscious mind. What has deeply touched is never truly forgotten. Jung called this the archetype of reunification, a symbolic field where everything that was intense always comes back to be integrated. Imagine this person lying in silence, and suddenly, without knowing why, he feels a tightening in his chest. He remembers your smile, senses your absence. It is not a coincidence, it is the strength of the psychic connection you have left in his soul. That is the secret. Jung taught that the psyche speaks through symbols, emotions and sensations, not through words. So you don't have to chase them, text them, or grovel. You have to strategically activate invisible triggers that will make them remember who you were, what you experienced together, and most importantly, what they lost. Want to be remembered? Then learn to speak the language of the soul, because when you reconnect with your own worth, when you become the best version of yourself not to impress but to heal, something magical happens. Jung called it synchronicity, and believe me, the mind of the one who has passed begins to fill with thoughts and emotions that he cannot explain, as if you begin to live in the spaces between his thoughts, quietly occupying all that he tried to erase. But there is a way to do this, and it is not obvious. It is not games or superficial formulas. It is self-knowledge, a deep mastery of your own shadow, and a clear understanding of how the collective unconscious influences human relationships. In this video, I will show you step by step how to access this invisible realm and make the one who has passed away start thinking about you without saying a word. And when this happens, you will be impossible to ignore, because you will not just be in memory, but in their unconscious. And this, my dear, cannot be erased. Part 1. The Illusion of Oblivion. The first thing you need to understand is that no one who has lived through a real emotional experience really forgets you. Carl Jung said that we remember not what happened, but what changed us. If your presence had an impact, if you touched the essence of another, it is imprinted in his unconscious, like an archetypal sign. The problem is that we often confuse distancing with oblivion, but these are different processes. Distancing can be a defense mechanism of the psyche, not a sign of indifference. The unconscious does not erase what caused pain, pleasure, desire, or transformation. Instead, it archives these experiences and returns to them in moments of vulnerability, silence, or existential emptiness. So when someone tries to forget you, they are really just pushing your presence into the basement of their psyche. Jung called this basement the shadow. Anything a person consciously rejects or denies turns into something that haunts them unconsciously, sooner or later. Here's the key. You don't have to be physically there to be emotionally present. If you have left a deep mark on someone, your absence will scream louder than any other presence. But this only happens when you stop chasing after them and begin to reconnect with yourself. Jung taught that the way to return is not through the other, but through yourself, because the other's unconscious only reacts when it sees that you are no longer who you once were. It's a bitter truth. The more you try to force a memory, the less significant you become. The human mind rejects the obsessive and opens to change. When you change, grow, and rethink yourself, the psyche of the one who left picks up on it without words, without noise. The feeling that he is different begins to penetrate like an unpleasant intuition. And this, my dear, cannot be controlled, because it is the call of the soul. The illusion of oblivion is shattered the moment you understand the symbolic language of the mind. You will not be remembered for persistence, but for a transformative absence. When you disappear and return as someone who not even the shadow of another can predict, you activate the ancient archetype of the hero's return. And at this point, the one who left begins to ask himself, "What have I lost?" Part 2. The Law of Mutual Projection. Carl Jung said that everything we love or hate in another is actually a projection of something we carry inside ourselves. When two people share an intense story, they exchange not only words or caresses, but also parts of their souls. And when the relationship ends, these projections do not disappear, they continue to operate quietly. The one who left continues to deal with parts of themselves that you awakened, even if they deny it. So often this person experiences unexplained anger, unexpected sadness, or melancholy, masquerading as pride. It is not directly related to you, but to the projection he placed on you. You were a mirror, a symbol, a trigger for inner parts that were never touched. And this is where the game comes in, because by working on yourself and healing yourself, you stop being just a mirror and become a lighthouse. And lighthouses don't chase ships. The key here is to understand that by being aware of another's projection, you gain power. You stop reacting emotionally to absence and begin to understand that the other is actually struggling with what you have discovered in him. And so he thinks about you, even while trying to forget, because the problem was not only in you, but in what you activated in him. The unconscious has its own language, symbolic, sensory, archetypal. By changing your energy, your behavior, and your presence in the world, you change how you are perceived in the unconscious of another. Suddenly, the person who left begins to see you in other faces, hear your voice in random songs, smell your scent on streets you never walked together. This is not magic, this is Jungian psychodynamics. So never underestimate the impact of your emotional presence, and don't try to erase that impact by forcing a return. Jung taught that everything that is true returns to the center of the psyche when you integrate the lesson. And the truth is that if you have been a mirror to something important, sooner or later that person will look inside and meet you there, even if they don't want to. Part 3. Inner Transformation as a Psychic Magnet. The biggest trap after a breakup is trying to get another back without getting back to yourself. Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." When you accept your pain, your absence, your emptiness, you begin the process of individuation, the journey of becoming who you really are. And it is in this process that you change the way you vibrate and the way you are perceived by the one who has passed. This transformation does not happen externally. It is not about posting happy photos or indirect messages on social media. It's noise, not resonance. What makes someone think about you intensely is the energetic silence you leave, the void no one else has been able to fill, the symbolic space no one else has been able to occupy. When you start growing, learning, working on your mind, body, and spirituality, something changes. And this change is felt subtly but deeply. Jung believed that the collective unconscious connects all human souls. It is as if we are all in an invisible network. When you heal, you emit a new frequency into this network, and this frequency reaches those who have already been connected to you. You become a living reminder of what this person has not yet been able to become, and this disturbs them, makes them think about you without understanding why. This phenomenon cannot be controlled, but it can be predicted, because the human psyche always strives to complete what was left unfinished. If your story with this person is not completely over, if there are still symbols, sensations, and unresolved meanings, her unconscious will try to bring it back to consciousness, not necessarily to relive it, but to integrate it. In this movement, you appear, you return. Your main weapon is meaningful silence. It is your absence accompanied by evolution. It is when you are no longer needed, and yet you are remembered because you were not just a name or a face, you were an emotional journey. Synchronicities and soul calls. One of Jung's most fascinating concepts is synchronicity. Seemingly random events that carry deep meaning. As you begin to align with your essence and move away from the need for approval, these synchronicities begin to happen, and the one who has passed begins to feel you in unexpected ways. Music, a smell, a dream, these are not coincidences. They are the unconscious trying to make the conscious aware of something important. This kind of reunion does not depend on rational will, because rationality tries to bury memories, and the unconscious digs deeper. Jung said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemicals. If a reaction occurs, both are transformed. If you were the catalyst for change for this person, they will never be the same again. Even if it tries to pretend that everything is as before, the soul feels the call of truth. It may take days, months, years, but it feels. And when this call becomes strong enough, the mind begins to look for excuses for the anxiety it cannot name. That's when the messages are born, the unexpected visits to your profile, the dreams with your face. You start to appear in his unconscious as a symbol, a reminder, a riddle to be solved. But it's important to understand, it's not about causing longing, it's about becoming a psychic echo resonating in the silence of another. Don't try to manipulate, don't try to impose, just evolve. Grow, improve, because the soul recognizes the purity of those who are at peace with themselves, and it is irresistible. When that person begins to feel your absence as a void that no one can fill, you will cease to be someone from the past. You will be the key to his future, a key that can only be used when he understands who you really were. Part 5. Final integration and return. The pits have reached their deepest point. Jung said that true reunion is not the meeting of two people, but the meeting of two souls who have completed their cycle of individuation. If this person starts thinking about you again, it is not because you tried, but because you became. When you become, you stand out from the noise, you become a symbol, you become an archetype. You want to not just be remembered, but to be recognized. Recognized as someone who left a mark, who grew, who didn't need approval to grow. And this only happens when you integrate your shadow, acknowledge your pain, heal your wounds and confidently move towards your goal. At that moment, you stop being a need and become an inspiration. And that is where true power is born. When you no longer need to be thought of, but still are thought of. When you no longer demand attention, but still occupy the thoughts of another. Because now you vibrate differently. You now radiate a presence that cannot be ignored. Jung said, you don't attract what you want. You attract who you are. Don't wait for a message, don't wait for a sign. Just know that in the silence of the soul of someone who has passed, your energy occupies a space that no one else fills. If that person ever crosses your path again, they will realize that they are not meeting someone from the past, but someone they have always been looking for without realizing it. And at that moment you will no longer need to be remembered, because you will become unforgettable. Conclusion. Liberation from toxic connections. We have come to the key point of this path. To understand that the constant presence of toxic people in our lives is not an accident or a punishment of fate, but a deep reflection of our unconscious. Carl Jung said that what you reject subjugates you. You may not realize that you are rejecting parts of yourself that still vibrate at the frequency of pain, rejection, or need for approval. These wounds, if left unacknowledged, become silent magnets for relationships that only increase suffering. But now you know. These people do not appear to destroy you, but to open you up. They are the most inconvenient mirrors of what still needs to be healed within you. When you begin to integrate your shadow, when you give voice to the suppressed, a new energy field forms around you that repels what used to attract. Jung taught that the unconscious, unacknowledged, becomes destiny. Accepting your truth, no matter how painful, means taking control of your life. You no longer need to get lost in other people's stories to feel a part of something. When you begin to recognize your own value without depending on someone else's approval, a new world opens up. A world where your relationships are built not on emotional deficit, but on the abundance of authenticity. Toxic people cannot survive where the truth is clear and self-love is undeniable. This clarity is your responsibility, your daily work. If today you feel that you are surrounded by an exhausting relationship, perceive it as a deep calling from your soul. A call to release the pattern, to heal the roots and to stop begging for the love that only you can give. No therapist, no book, not even this video can do it for you. Only you can. But it is this awakening that separates those who live in repetition from those who choose transformation. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe to our channel, Flow of Thoughts, and turn on notifications so you don't miss new helpful videos.